Hi, everyone. I hope that you are doing well. All right, so we're going to go ahead and jump into chapter one, the communication process. I'm going to share my screen. All right, so the first thing I want you to do is go ahead and jot down what is communication? And I challenge you to come up with a definition in your own terms. What is communication to you? So many people, whenever they answer the question, consider verbal communication. So, me talking to another person, or even the nonverbal elements of communication. However, communication is so much bigger than that. We know that we have mass communication, we know that we have social media and technology communication, then we have that face-to-face communication. And there's so many elements that are embedded within each of them. However, at its core, communication is as simple as saying it's the process of mutual creation of meaning. So, for example, if I were to ask you what this is, you might say a glass of water, and you'd be correct because we both have that shared understanding that that was indeed a glass of water. So, we've created that mutual understanding of what something is. And this can get even a little bit more complex. And we'll talk about this in chapter two because we have these abstract ideas. If I were to ask you to define what is love, you might have a different understanding of what love is versus myself, and we might have different understandings of it. However, if I were to ask the entire class, do you know what love is? I guarantee almost everyone would raise their hand, and we would have some type of shared understanding of what it is. So, with concrete things like a glass of water, it might be a little easier to understand. However, we have these abstract ideas that make communication a little bit more tricky. So, one of the things in the book is it said that constantly, tirelessly, automatically, we make meaning. What's perhaps the most remarkable about it is that we hardly notice we're doing anything at all. So a lot of people say to me, Professor Magnarelli, why do I have to take a communication class? I already know how to talk. I already know how to write. So we do a lot of things automatically and we don't have to think about it. However, there's different layers of communication to think about. Communication is more than us just talking or writing things down. There's different theories for us to consider about communication to help us understand how communication works and how we're able to connect with different people. So we have two different communication models that I'd like to start with, and the first is the linear model. So, whenever communication first started being researched, they considered communication to be a one way street. So, it's a linear model. It goes one way. You have a source, you have a message, and you have a receiver. However, people started thinking, hey, there's some problems with that. People are getting feedback. Even whenever you think about mass media, there's largely one way. They're still able to get some type of feedback. So there started to be problems with this model. Like communication isn't one way. We know that people are able to respond back. So it's evolved into this transactional model of communication. So we start with a sender, and the sender sends a message, and someone has to receive that message. So if I were to walk up to you and say, like, hey, what's up? Ideally, you would be able to get that message, understand it, and then respond back. So at its core, we have a sender, a message, receiver, and then that channel or channels of feedback. Gets a little bit more complicated than that. If you look there, we can see that there's a channel, there's different ways that we're able to communicate with people. This might involve face to face, it might involve our cell phones and texting people, it might involve the radio or the television. So, that channel is the mechanism in which we are communicating with people. We know that we're able to communicate with people and they're able to receive our message and then give feedback. And we do this through different channels. However, some things can get in the way. So that could be all the different types of noise. So the first type of noise I want you to consider is a physical noise. So you're sitting in a classroom, the person next to you is tapping on the desk, That could be a physical noise that gets in the way. However, you could also have psychological noise. I'm going to assume that maybe someone is watching this late at night and you're thinking to yourself, gosh, I just want to go to sleep. All right, I'm going to make it through the video. But gosh, I really want to go to sleep. So we could have that psychological noise that can get in the way that we're thinking about something else. Or maybe you're sitting there and you're like, I'm really hungry. I really want to eat. Lots of different noise can get in the way, and it can be physical or psychological. I want you also to consider the environment in which communication is happening. The environment plays a huge role. If you're in a library, you might be whispering. However, if you're at a big party and there's lots of loud music playing, and you're at a concert, or you're having to talk to a friend, you might be shouting. So that environment that you're in also has a huge impact on the communication. Culture also helps us create understanding in this message that we're sending back and forth. There's elements of verbal and nonverbal communication. Culture is going to play a big role in that. Culture is the world made meaningful. It's socially constructed and maintained through communication. It limits as well as liberates us. It differentiates us as well as unites us. It defines our realities and thereby shapes the way we think, feel, and act. What exactly does that mean? How is culture making the world meaningful? You are part of a lot of different cultures. One of the culture you might want to consider is the mainstream culture. That's something that you could say is part of the dominant culture that almost every single person in this culture is going to experience. But then in addition to that, you are part of bounded or co-cultures. Some people might have heard of them called subcultures before. Maybe you are part of a sports team. That could be a co-culture. Or maybe you're part of a specific group. Maybe you're part of a specific ethnicity. Whenever you think about those bounded or co-cultures, you're going to be thinking about those different groups that you are a part of that probably makes you unique. One of the biggest elements that helps us make up communication is that of perception. And perception has three different steps: selection, organization, and interpretation. And an easy way of looking at this is taking a look at the image right there. Looking at the image, what do you see? Chances are you see A, B, C, 12, 13, 14. What you did right there is that you had to select on your screen the image, and then you started organizing and interpreting what you saw. In the top one, you saw A, B, C. Second, you saw 12, 13, 14. What you might not have noticed right away is that the B and the 13 are the exact same symbol, but you have to be able to organize and interpret it based upon the clues around it. So that's a simple way of looking at perception in a nutshell, is that we select, organize, and interpret based upon the context in which things are functioning. What's really important about this is that selection is the first step, but there's so many things happening around us that we can't be able to stop, pause, and look at everything. We only have to select the things that are important. Hypothetically, let's say that you walk into a room. The first thing you're going to notice is maybe the temperature, but you're only going to notice it if it's too hot or too cold. Otherwise, it's something that can go to the periphery. We're only selecting things that are important to us and that we really need to organize and interpret. And then that organization interpretation element really might fit in with schemas. A schema is a mental structure built from past experiences that we use to process new information and organize new experiences. So let's say that you travel all the way to Southern California and you've never been there before. You might be using a schema to help your understanding of where you are at. Maybe on television or somewhere online, you've looked at information about Southern California before, and that's going to help create your experience there. I know about these different places in Southern California because of what I've seen online. You're using your past experiences